My sister, Thea, planned her wedding as a weapon, and I was her target. She forced me to bring my awkward childhood friend as a joke to humiliate me. But she forgot one thing: people change. When he walked in, the only one humiliated was her. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The text message chime on my phone sounded less like a notification and more like a tiny digital gavel, delivering another judgment. I was sitting on the lumpy futon in the hospital break room, my scrubs still faintly smelling of antiseptic, and the strawberry-scented soap we use in the pediatric wing. My feet throbbed in my sneakers. I'd just finished a 12-hour shift that had turned into a 14-hour one, thanks to a 4-year-old with a sudden spike in fever. I was exhausted, but it was the good kind of exhaustion, the kind that comes from doing something that matters. Then I looked at my phone. It was my sister, Thea. Text 19:02 p.m. Lucy, where are you? I've been calling. The calligrapher sent the wrong ink. It's champagne gold, not antique gold. It's a crisis. Text 29:03 p.m. This is going to throw off the entire tablescape aesthetic. I cannot believe you're not answering. Text 39:05 p.m. Call me. Now. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. My sister wasn't just a bride. She was a luxury event planner by trade, which meant her own wedding had become less a celebration of love and more a high-stakes, military-grade production of her personal brand. She and her fiancé, Greg, a marketing director from a family with a proper last name, weren't just getting married. They were, in Thea's words, curating an immersive, multi-platform luxury experience. I was the maid of honor, which I'd learned was a title that meant chief operations manager, emotional punching bag, and 24/7 crisis support. I was too tired to text, so I just hit call. She picked up before the first ring finished. Lucy, finally. Her voice was a high-wire act of tension. I've been trying too. Thea, I just got off my shift. I'm on my way home. What's wrong? What's wrong? She scoffed. The ink, Lucy, it's the wrong shade. It's tacky. It looks like something you'd get at a craft store, and that's not even the worst part. I'm looking at the final seating chart, and we have a major problem. I braced myself. What is it? It's you, she said, her voice dropping. You're the problem. Excuse me. Table 9, my table. Greg's parents, the Harrisons, it's a table for 10. And you haven't listed a +1. I rubbed my temples. We had been over this. Thea, I'm the maid of honor. I'm not going to be sitting much. I'll be helping you, getting the gifts, coordinating with the venue staff. I don't need a date. This isn't about need, Lucy. This is about symmetry, she hissed. It's about the look of the thing. I have 9 people at the head table. 9, it's an odd number. It's unbalanced. It will look terrible in the photographs. You have to bring someone, I don't care who. This was new, and we were 2 weeks out. And who do you suggest I find in 2 weeks, Thea? I don't have a boyfriend. I've been working doubles to help pay for that bachelorette party in Napa, remember? Don't throw that in my face, she snapped. I'm not asking you to marry the man, I'm asking you to find one. What about that doctor you mentioned? The one in radiology. Dr. Patel, he's gay, and married. Useless. She was silent for a moment, and I could hear her tapping her acrylic nails on her desk. Then her voice changed. It became light, airy, and dangerously sweet. It was the voice she used when she was about to be her most cruel. You know, I just had the funniest thought, she said, her voice sing-song. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. What thought, Thea? Do you remember that? That little friend you used to have, the one who was always lurking, skinny with the glasses, what was his name? Edward. My blood ran cold. I remember Edward, yes. God, what was that awful nickname we had for him? Bookworm, that was it. She cackled, a sharp, unpleasant sound. Oh, Lucy, can you imagine? Can you imagine him in his terrible, ill-fitting, everything, at a black tie event? Oh my God, the contrast. She was laughing so hard she seemed to be running out of breath. Lucy, please tell me you're still in touch with him. You have to bring him. It would be priceless. It'll be my little wedding gift. A bit of comedy. I was stunned into silence. She wasn't suggesting, she was demanding. She wanted to put my oldest, dearest friend on display as a prop, a joke. Thea, that's horrible. I'm not doing that. Her voice went from sweet to ice in a nanosecond. Yes, you are, or you can. Find another table to sit at. Maybe with the vendors. You have 2 weeks, Lucy. You're bringing a date or you're ruining my head table. And if you're going to ruin it anyway, you might as well make it funny. Thea, that's... I have to go, she said, all business. The florist is on the other line. Confirm bookworm by tomorrow so I can get his meal choice. I'll just assume it's the kid's meal. Bye. The line clicked. I sat there in the humming silence of the break room, the phone heavy in my hand. My sister wasn't just a bride. She was a bully, and she had just handed me a social grenade and pulled the pin. The betrayal was so casual, so complete, that it hurt more than any overt insult. She didn't just want a perfect wedding, she wanted a perfect humiliation. And I was her chosen accomplice. I drove home from the hospital in a daze, my mind replaying Thea's laughter. Priceless. A bit of comedy. The casual cruelty of it all was breathtaking. This was the sister I had covered for, the sister I had loaned money to, the sister I had defended to our parents for years. When I got to my small apartment, I didn't even turn on the lights. I just sat on my sofa, the city lights painting patterns on the wall, and felt the weight of my relationship with Thea settle on me like a lead blanket. She saw me as a prop, an accessory, and she saw my only childhood friend as a punchline. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, a new text from Thea. Text 10:17 p.m. P.S. Make sure he doesn't wear those awful brown corduroy pants. It's black, tie, emphasis on tie. Let me know when he's confirmed. I need to get his dietary restrictions. Probably plain, lol. I winced, closing my eyes. She was relentless. The Thea I knew as a child was right there, just under the surface of the sophisticated, luxury event planner. The girl who had accidentally spilled a soda on Edward's state science fair project. The girl who had told me, in a loud whisper, that hanging out with him made me look desperate. I was trapped. I knew, as surely as I knew my own name, that if I refused, Thea would unleash a storm of emotional warfare. She would call our parents and tell them I was jealous and sabotaging her big day. She would turn the bridesmaids against me. She would make the next 2 weeks of my life, and the wedding day itself, an absolute misery. She didn't just play chess, she burned the board if she wasn't winning. But asking Edward, that felt like a betrayal of a different, purer, and much older alliance. Edward and I had been inseparable from age 8 to 18. We were the quiet kids, the library kids. While Thea was practicing her cheer routines, we were building volcanoes in my backyard, writing coded messages, and drawing up blueprints for multi-story treehouses. He was lanky, yes, and shy, and he wore thick glasses. He was also the most brilliant person I'd ever met, with a mind that moved so fast he sometimes stumbled over his words trying to keep up with it. Thea's nickname, Bookworm, had been designed to wound, but Edward had just shrugged and said, "But I like books, and worms are great for soil." He'd been my anchor, and Thea wanted me to use him as her jester. We hadn't seen each other in person in almost 5 years. He'd gotten a full scholarship to a prestigious university, then a master's degree in naval architecture. His career had taken him overseas, Singapore, Hamburg, Spain. We were holiday card and occasional text, friends now. I had no idea what his life was really like. I looked at the framed photo on my mantle. It was from high school graduation. Me, grinning in my cap and gown. Thea, next to me, already looking like a magazine ad. And on my other side, Edward, looking impossibly young and gangly, his arm shyly around my shoulder. Thea has forgotten one crucial thing, I thought, a bitter taste in my mouth. She's forgotten that people are not just the snapshots she keeps in her head. I felt a sudden, strange flicker of something, not a plan, just a hot, sharp feeling in my chest. It was the part of me that had defended Edward on the playground, the part that had sat with him in the principal's office after he'd finally snapped and thrown a textbook at one of Thea's friends. With a deep, shaky breath, I pulled out my laptop. I couldn't call him. I was too much of a coward for that. I opened a messaging app. His name, Edward Shaw, sat there, his status icon a simple, professional-looking E. I typed and deleted. "Hey Edward, this is the weirdest text you'll ever get. Hi, my sister is a monster and wants to ruin your life. So, what are you doing in 2 weeks? Want to be publicly humiliated?" Finally, I settled on a message that was both pathetically vague and deeply cowardly. "Hey Edward, it's Lucy. This is going to sound completely random and so last minute, but are you by any chance going to be in the country in 2 weeks? Specifically on the 18th. I hit send my heart pounding. I was already crafting my follow-up text, the one where I'd say, "Never mind, work thing, my mistake." I stared at the delivered receipt for a full minute. I was about to close the laptop when the 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. My stomach did a flip-flop. Ping. "Edward, Lucy, what a coincidence. I am literally looking at a flight confirmation to SFO right now. I have to fly in for a project review at the shipyard on the 17th. I was planning on just living in a hotel for the weekend. Why? What's up?" My hands were shaking. This was a terrible, horrible, no-good idea. But Thea's voice, cackling about comedy, echoed in my ears. I typed back, the lie feeling heavy on my fingers. "Lucy, that's a crazy coincidence. Well, my sister Thea is getting married on the 18th. I'm the maid of honor and I have a +1. It's a black tie thing. I know it's a huge ask and no pressure at all, but would you want to go? It might be nice to see you." I hit send. The wait was agonizing. He was typing again, then he stopped. Then he was typing again. Ping. "Edward, Thea's getting married? Wow, the world does change. I'd be honored, Luce. Seriously, it would be great to see you. Beats a hotel room and bad room service. Send me the details." I stared at the screen. He said yes. He'd actually, cheerfully, said yes. The knot of dread in my stomach didn't go away. It just twisted, tightening into something new and complicated. Something that felt dangerously like a countdown. The next 2 weeks were a blur of wedding-related panic. Thea's vision was all-consuming. It wasn't just a wedding. It was, by her own admission, the biggest portfolio piece of her career. As a luxury event planner, she was deeply embedded in a world I couldn't and didn't want to understand. A world where the specific shade of a white rose, was it true white or cream white, was cause for a tearful, screaming phone call. A world where good and bad were replaced with aspirational and tacky. Her fiancé, Greg, was a perfect match for this world. He was handsome in a generic, catalog model way, and his job as a marketing director seemed to mostly involve using words like synergy and brand identity. He treated Thea's constant demands with a sort of placid, indulgent smile, as if she were a precocious child and not a 29-year-old terror. His deference to her, his complete lack of a spine, only seemed to fuel her control. My role in this production had been clear from the start. I was the support staff. I was the one who had spent a weekend I couldn't afford off work for a bachelorette vision boarding retreat in Napa. I was the one who had paid, from my pediatric nurse salary, for a bridesmaid dress that cost more than my rent, a truly hideous creation in a color Thea called greige. But my deepest sacrifice had always been my role as Thea's fixer. Our family had a long-established pattern. Thea would create a storm, and I would be sent in with the emotional mop. When Thea borrowed our parents' car in high school and crashed it, I was the one who stayed up with her, coaching her on how to apologize. When she dropped out of her first-choice college after 1 semester because the vibe was off, I was the one who spent hours helping her with applications for a new, more exclusive design school, all while I was juggling my own nursing clinicals. I had sacrificed my time, my money, and my own peace of mind, all in service of keeping Thea calm. Our parents had always encouraged it. "You're the patient one, Lucy," my mom would say. "She just feels things more intensely than the rest of us." What she felt was a bottomless need for a very specific kind of attention. She didn't just want to be loved, she wanted to be envied. And that's where Edward had always come in. He was the living, breathing proof that I had a life, a friendship that was completely separate from her. And she hated it. Throughout our school years, her bullying of him was a direct line of attack at me. She'd mock his clothes, his glasses, his quiet nature. She'd jokingly ask him questions in front of her friends about advanced physics, just to watch him stumble over his words, not from ignorance, but from a paralyzing shyness. And now she was planning her masterpiece, a final, public mockery. I confirmed Edward with Thea via a short text. Edward can make it. He's flying in for work anyway. Her reply was instant. Perfect. I've put him down for the chicken. Seems safest. Don't let him rent a tux, by the way. It'll be shiny. Just get his measurements. I'll have him fitted with Greg's groomsmen. I can't have him showing up looking like a waiter. My treat. Lol, my charity work. I felt sick. She was already stage managing his humiliation, turning him into a dress-up doll for her amusement. I sent a message to Edward. Hey, random question. What's your suit size? My sister is coordinating things. His reply was Brie. Ezzy, don't worry about it, Luce. Black tie is in the job description half the time. I'll bring my own. Just tell me what time to pick you up. I relayed the message. He said he has his own. Thea's reply was a single, annoyed fine. A few days later, a crisis arose that perfectly captured my sister's character. She called me frantic. Lucy, I need you to leave work. It's an emergency. What? Thea, I'm in the middle of a shift. A child is having trouble breathing. What is it? It's the favors, she whispered as if she were a spy. They've arrived. The custom-etched champagne flutes. And the etching? It's off-center by a millimeter. A full millimeter, Lucy. Thea, I can't leave a sick child for a champagne flute. There was a pause, a cold, dead silence on the line. I see, she said, her voice dripping with ice. It's good to know your priorities. It's good to know that a stranger's child is more important than your sister's one perfect day. Fine, suffer. But when the photos are ruined and everyone at the reception sees the shoddy workmanship, I'll remember this. I'll remember you didn't care. She hung up. The call was so perfectly, profoundly Thea that it was almost clarifying. She wasn't just obsessed with her wedding. She was a black hole of narcissism, and I'd been letting her pull me into her orbit my entire life. As I walked back to my patient's room, I thought about Edward. I thought about how he was flying 15 hours, coming to this circus, just because I asked, because he was a friend. I felt a sudden, fierce wave of protectiveness. Thea's plan was clear. Stick Bookworm at the head table, let him be awkward, let him be the troll next to her princesses, and solidify her own superiority. But her plan was based on a 15-year-old boy. And I had a strange, growing suspicion that the man who was flying in from Singapore was not that 15-year-old boy. Thea, in her disingenuous, polished world, had no room for genuine change. She'd built her entire trap, but she'd built it with a high school yearbook as her blueprint, and that blueprint was 10 years out of date. The day of the wedding arrived, not with a sense of joy, but with the grim, oppressive weight of an impending deadline. My apartment had been bridal HQ since 6 a.m. Thea, Greg, and the entire bridal party were staying at the opulent hotel venue, but the hair and makeup team, a small army of 6 people, had been dispatched to my tiny apartment to get the maid of honor ready before I was chauffeured to the main event. Thea herself had been texting since dawn. 5:12 a.m., you awake? I'm not sleeping, this is it. 6:03 a.m., the air in my suite is too dry, it's making my skin tight. 7:30 a.m., the makeup artist is here, she's breathing too loud. Now, I was a prisoner in my own living room, which had been transformed by Thea's glam squad. A woman with severe eyeliner was pulling my hair so tight I was sure my eyebrows would meet my hairline. Thea's voice, bubbly and fake, came through my phone's speaker. I had to have her on speaker so my hands could be available for primping. Luce, darling, you sound stressed, she chirped. Don't be stressed. I'm the one who's stressed. Did I tell you Greg's mother is wearing beige to a wedding? It's practically white. So tacky. Thea, my dress is beige, I said, my voice flat. Yes, darling, but yours is grayish, and it's meant to be unflattering so I stand out more. It's strategic. Hers is just sad. I felt the stylist's comb snag a knot, and I winced. It was in this moment, a prisoner in a chair, being berated by my sister while being physically assaulted by a hairbrush, that something inside me finally shifted. I wasn't just a victim. I was a volunteer. I had been volunteering for this treatment my whole life. I'd been so afraid of Thea's tantrums, of her icy disapproval, that I'd let her walk all over me. I'd let her turn me into her accomplice in a cruel high school joke. Thea, on the phone, was already moving on. So, is Bookworm still coming? She whispered, her voice giddy with a conspiratorial, cruel excitement. Did you manage to get him into that tux I ordered? He said he had his own, I said, my voice tight. Oh, God, Thea groaned, and I could hear her relaying this to her bridesmaids in the background. He has his own. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be shiny polyester, I just know it. Oh, well, the charity angle is even better. I can't wait to see Greg's parents' faces. This is going to be the story of the night. And there it was, the shift. The hot spark of anger from 2 weeks ago, which had been simmering, finally ignited. She wasn't just mean, she was proud of it. She was planning on it. This wasn't a last-minute seating chart problem. This was the entertainment. You know, Thea, I said, my voice suddenly calm and steady, I'm just glad he could be here to support me, like a real friend. There was a pause, stylist stopped pulling. What a weird thing to say, Thea said, her voice losing its bubble. Whatever, just try to keep him away from the raw bar. I don't want him making a mess. She hung up. I looked at my reflection. The woman in the chair looked pale, tired, and angry, good. I was no longer just surviving this day. I was anticipating it. The clever trap wasn't mine, it was Thea's, but she had made a critical error. Her trap was built on the assumption that Edward was a victim and that I was her loyal soldier. She'd forgotten that her soldier was a pediatric nurse, someone whose entire professional life was about protecting the vulnerable. And she'd forgotten that her victim was, in fact, a complete unknown. My phone, free from Thea's tyranny, was now my own. I opened the messaging app. My text chain with Edward was purely logistical. What's the address? What time? Now, I sent a new one. Lucy, 11:05 a.m. Hey, just a heads up, we're at the venue. My sister is, well, she's Thea, in full-blown bridezilla mode. Edward, 11:06 a.m. Roger that. She's still using a planner for everything. Lucy, 11:07 a.m. She is the planner. This whole thing is her masterpiece. The crowd is a bit stuffy. Her new in-laws are very old money. Just be yourself, that's all. Edward, 11:09 a.m. Be myself. Got it. Does that mean I should or should not bring up the time we tried to build a functional rocket in your backyard and almost set your dad's shed on fire? A real, actual laugh bubbled out of me. The makeup artist glared. Lucy, 11:10 a.m. Maybe save that for the toast. Just, thank you for doing this, Edward. You're a better friend than I deserve. Edward, 11:12 a.m. Don't worry, Luce. I've handled North Sea platform negotiations and angry shipyard foremen. I think I can handle one stuffy wedding. See you at 4. I closed my phone. The stylist announced I was done. I stood up. The ceremony was at 2 p.m. at the venue. After that, I had a 2-hour break where I was instructed to freshen up and manage the gift table before the reception at 5. It was during that break that Edward was slated to pick me up. The ceremony was a blur of grayish fabric, a million white peonies, and Thea's blindingly bright smile, which didn't quite reach her eyes. Greg looked handsome, if a bit like a hostage. At 3:45 p.m., I was back in my apartment, having raced from the venue. I had 15 minutes. I touched up my makeup, my hands trembling slightly. Was I nervous, or was I excited? At 3:59 p.m., my apartment buzzer rang. I took a deep breath. I looked at the picture of the lanky, awkward boy on my mantel one last time. Then I went to open the door. I opened the door, and I stopped. My brain stalled. The man standing in my hallway was not Edward. He was a stranger, a very, very handsome stranger. This man was tall, not just tall for Edward, but genuinely tall, at least 63. He had the kind of broad shoulders that made my apartment doorway seem small. He was dressed in a black tuxedo that was so perfectly tailored, it looked like it had been custom-made for him, which I realized with a jolt it probably was. His hair, which I remembered as a shaggy brown mop that was always falling into his eyes, was now shorter, expertly cut, and slightly darker. There were a few distinguished, almost silver strands at his temples that only made him look more refined, more substantial. And the glasses. The thick, clunky, taped-together glasses were gone. His eyes, which I'd only ever seen magnified or hidden, were clear, sharp, and a deep, intelligent hazel. They were currently crinkling at the corners as he looked at me, a slow, easy smile spreading across his face. "Lucy," he said. My heart stopped. The voice. It was his voice, but it was not. The high, reedy tenor that used to crack when he got excited was gone. This voice was a smooth, confident baritone with a faint, unplaceable accent, a slight European lilt to his R's. "You look amazing," he said, his smile widening. "Is that Grage?" My hand was still on the doorknob. My mouth was open. Edward," I finally managed to whisper. He laughed, a warm, rich sound that filled my hallway. "In the flesh, or are you going to make me stand out here? I think your neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, is getting suspicious." "Oh my God," I said, stepping back. "Edward, I'm sorry, wow, you." "Clean up okay?" he offered, stepping inside. He moved with a quiet, solid confidence that was utterly new. The lanky, awkward boy who used to hunch his shoulders to seem smaller was gone. This man stood to his full height, completely at ease in his own skin. Wow is not the word," I stammered. You look incredible." "Thanks," he said, adjusting his cufflink, a simple, elegant silver knot. "You learn a thing or two when you spend half your life at corporate dinners. Black tie is practically my work uniform. You, on the other hand," he sighed. His eyes scanning me with genuine warmth, "look beautiful, like a very, very patient woodland sprite." I laughed, a real shaky laugh. "We've got to stop letting Thea name things," I said, finally finding my footing. "Agreed," he said. He looked around my small, tidy apartment, his gaze landing on the photo on the mantel. The two of us, grinning at graduation. He picked it up. "Look at us," he said, a note of wonder in his voice. "We were children. We really were," I said, "and you flew all this way." "I was flying this way anyway," he said, putting the photo down. "But I wouldn't have missed this. It's really, really good to see you, Luce." The old nickname, Luce, from him hit me with a wave of warmth. "It's good to see you too," I said. I'm really glad you're here." The car ride to the reception. He'd rented a sleek, black Audi, not a nondescript taxi, was a strange mix of catching up and pre-battle nerves. He told me about his current project, overseeing the design and construction of a new class of eco-friendly container ships in Singapore. He talked about it with a passion and precision that was mesmerizing. He wasn't just a naval architect. He was, I realized, a world builder. He was designing the very things that moved our modern world. And he listened. He asked me about my work in the pediatric ward, and when I told him about the long hours and the emotional burnout, he didn't give me platitudes. He just nodded and said, "That's real work, Lucy. You're mending people. I just move boxes, really." As we pulled up to the impossibly opulent country club with its sweeping lawns and white-columned facade, my stomach twisted. The valet, in a crisp red jacket, hurried to open the door. "You ready for this?" I asked, my voice small. "Born ready," he said, "or, moderately prepared." As he was handing the keys to the valet, my phone buzzed. It was Thea. "Text 4, "52 p.m., where are you? You're late. The receiving line is starting. And I swear if you walk in with bookworm during my main entrance, I will end you." I felt the blood drain from my face. I showed the text to Edward. He read it, his expression thoughtful. He didn't get angry, he didn't get flustered, he just smiled. "Well, we can't end you," he said, his voice dry. "That sounds deeply inconvenient." He pocketed his phone, walked around the car, and opened my door, offering me his hand. "Lucy," he said, his eyes locking on mine. His face was serious but kind. "Your sister is a bully. And bullies, high school or otherwise, only have the power you give them. Tonight, we're just not giving her any." He offered me his arm. "Ready?" I looked at the man in front of me, the confident, brilliant, stunning man who had been my first and best friend. And for the first time that day, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Ready," I said, and I took his arm. We walked into the pre-reception cocktail hour. It was exactly as Thea had intended, an oppressive, overwhelming display of wealth. The ballroom was massive, dripping with chandeliers that looked heavy enough to kill someone. The air was thick with the scent of 1,000 white peonies and the murmur of what I privately called Thea's people. Men in identical tuxedos and women in shimmering, expensive gowns, all holding delicate glasses of champagne. Thea, naturally, was holding court near a grand, sweeping staircase. She was in her custom gown, a mountain of silk and lace, with her new husband, Greg, beaming blankly beside her. She was flanked by Greg's parents, the Harrisons. Mr. Harrison looked like the kind of man who owned a bank, and probably did, and Mrs. Harrison looked like she hadn't had a carb since 1998. Thea was scanning the room, her eyes like a hawk searching for prey, or, more accurately, like a director searching for a flawed extra. She saw me. Her face tightened immediately. A "you're late and you are a problem" sneer was already forming. She started to turn to Greg, no doubt to whisper a complaint about her useless sister. Then her eyes moved. They moved from me to the man standing next to me, the man whose arm I was holding. It wasn't a gradual realization. It was a car crash. Thea's smile didn't just fade. It froze, cracked, and shattered. The color drained from her face so fast she looked gray. Her perfectly applied, pillow talk, lipstick suddenly looked garish against her pale skin. Her hand, holding her champagne flute, visibly trembled, and a small splash of liquid hit the pristine white marble floor. She stared, her mouth opened, then closed. She was trying to compute, to reconcile. This was not bookworm. This was not the joke. This was a movie star, a CEO, a threat. And it wasn't just Thea. As we walked further into the room, the collective murmur of the party changed. It lulled, then spiked. Heads were turning. Women were looking at Edward with open appreciation. Men were looking at him with a different, more appraising respect. A new center of gravity had just entered the room, and it was standing next to the Grage, unflattering maid of honor. Seeing Thea's face, her perfect plan exploding in real time, I felt a sudden, incredible lightness. It was a giddy, powerful, and slightly terrifying feeling. "Drink," Edward murmured in my ear, his voice warm. "Please," I breathed. We didn't make it to the bar. "Greg, Thea," a booming voice called out. It was Mr. Harrison. He was ignoring Thea's catatonic state and striding toward us, hand outstretched. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at Edward. "You must be with Lucy," Mr. Harrison said, sizing Edward up but with an immediate, clear-eyed approval. "I'm Robert Harrison. A pleasure." "Edward Shaw," Edward replied, his handshake firm and easy. "A privilege to meet you, sir. Lucy and I are old friends." "Shaw," Mrs. Harrison, who had glided up behind her husband, mused. "That's a familiar name. You wouldn't be related to the Shaw Maritime Group, would you?" Thea, who had finally snapped out of her trance, was rushing over. Her face was a mask of forced, brittle calm. Edward smiled at Mrs. Harrison. "That's my family's firm, yes," he said, just as Thea arrived. "I'm on the design side of things. My current project is a new hull series we're building out of the Singapore shipyard." The Harrisons' eyes lit up. This was not the reaction Thea had promised them. Shaw Maritime wasn't just old money, it was global industry. It was a name that meant something in their world. Thea looked like she was going to be physically ill. "Edward, you made it," Thea trilled, her voice at least 2 octaves higher than normal. "I barely recognized you. You look completely different." "Thea," Edward said, nodding politely, his face a perfect mask of pleasantry. "You look exactly as I remembered. Congratulations. The floral arrangements are truly extensive." The dig was so subtle, so perfectly delivered, that only I suspected Thea caught it. Thea was flustermagoogled. Her joke was now the most impressive man in the room, and he was mine. She scrambled, trying to regain control of the narrative. "Edward, you must meet Greg's uncle, Barry," she said, grabbing his arm. "He's in boats, too. He has a yacht." The desperation was palpable. Edward gently but firmly disengaged his arm from her grip. "That sounds wonderful," he said, with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But I did promise Lucy a drink first. It's been a long day for the maid of honor." He placed a hand on the small of my back. The gesture was so simple, so protective, so possessive that it sent a small shockwave through me. "If you'll excuse us," he said to the Harrisons. He steered me through the stunned crowd, leaving Thea standing there, alone with her new in-laws, who were now looking at her with a sudden, new, and very uncomfortable curiosity. The charity case was the guest of honor, and Thea, the magnificent planner, had clearly not planned for this. Dinner was a tense affair, at least for me. We were seated at the head table, just as Thea had planned. But the dynamic she had envisioned, me, her, and the joke, was not playing out. Instead, I was seated between Edward and Mr. Harrison. The two of them spent most of the meal in a deep, engaged conversation about shipping lanes, global logistics, and material science. Mr. Harrison was clearly deeply impressed. Across the table, Thea was trying and failing to hold her court. She kept trying to interrupt, to bring the conversation back to her dress, the honeymoon in the Maldives, the extensive peonies. But every time, the conversation would naturally, inevitably, drift back to Edward. Greg, for his part, just kept eating his salmon, smiling blandly, completely oblivious to the social warfare erupting around him. Thea was fuming, I could see it. Her perfect smile was welded on, but her eyes were cold, and she was drinking champagne at an alarming rate. Her plan had not just failed, it had backfired spectacularly. She had intended to bring a jester to her court and had instead imported a king. Then the speeches began. The best man's speech was forgettable. Greg's was short. I stood up and gave my speech, the one I'd practiced. It was polite, safe, and generic. I talked about sisterhood and new beginnings. I didn't mention bookworm. I didn't mention anything real. I sat down to polite applause. The MC announced, "And now we'll have the final toast of the evening from the bride herself, Thea." This was not on the schedule. I saw the wedding coordinator, a woman Thea had hired to manage her own plans, look up in a panic. Thea stood up, grabbing her champagne glass. She tapped her fork against it, a sharp, angry tink-tink-tink that cut through the room. I just want to say one more little thing," she said, her voice a little too loud, the words slightly slurred. She swayed. "Just a fraction." Greg put a hand on her arm. "Thea, honey, let's..." She shook him off. No, I have to, it's important." She turned, her eyes locking on me, and then, with venomous precision, on Edward. "I just want to thank my little sister, Lucy," she said, her voice dripping with a saccharine poison. "For being here and for bringing such a surprise." The room was uncomfortably silent. "You know, we all have history," she continued, "and it's so important to remember where you came from, isn't it?" She raised her glass, her eyes fixed on Edward. "Some of us, we change so much. We get new suits, new jobs, we travel the world. But it's just so funny, isn't it?" She paused for dramatic effect. "I look at Lucy's date and all I can see, all I can remember, is the lanky, awkward, weird little boy who used to drop all his books in the hallway." A collective, horrified gasp rippled through the room. Greg looked like he wanted to die. His parents were staring at their plates, their faces like stone. "So," Thea shouted, triumphant, "I'd like to propose a toast to Bookworm," she raised her glass high, "for proving that anyone, even you, can clean up for a day, to Bookworm." She took a long, deep drink. The silence that followed was so complete, so heavy it was suffocating. I felt the blood rush from my face. The old, familiar hot shame washed over me. I wanted to disappear. And then Edward stood up. He didn't look angry. He wasn't flustered. He was calm. He was smiling. A polite, almost academic smile. He picked up his water glass. He waited until every single eye in the room was on him. "Thank you, Thea," he said, his voice calm, clear, and carrying perfectly in the dead silent room. He didn't need a microphone. "Thank you, you're right, I was that lanky kid. And I did drop my books, quite a bit as I recall." He chuckled, and the tension in the room shifted just a fraction. "I was also," he continued, "the kid who won the state physics prize. I was the kid who got a full scholarship to MIT, and I was the kid who was lucky enough, profoundly lucky, to be friends with the only person in that entire school with a truly, genuinely good heart. Your sister." He turned and raised his water glass to me. My eyes filled with tears. "To Lucy," he said. The room was wrapped. Then he turned back to Thea. His smile was gone, replaced by a look of cool, surgical precision. "You're right about another thing, Thea. It is important to remember where you came from, but I find it's more important to see where you are, right now." His eyes scanned the room. "I, for instance, am in a room full of strangers at my oldest friend's sister's wedding. It's a lovely party." He looked directly at her. "You," he said, his voice dropping, "are in a room full of people you paid to be here, surrounded by your new family, and you are still trying to bully the same two kids you did in high school." Someone gasped. It might have been Mrs. Harrison. "So I would like to propose a real toast," Edward said, his voice powerful now. "Not to Bookworm, but to my friend Lucy, the hardest-working, most compassionate, and most patient woman I have ever known." He turned to me, his eyes full of a warmth that made my heart ache. "And to Thea," he said, turning back one last time, "for giving us all a very, very clear reminder of how important it is to grow up." He lifted his glass. To growing up. The silence was agonizing. Then from the head table, Mr. Harrison, Greg's father, stood up. He lifted his own glass high. "Hear, hear," he boomed. "To growing up, and to Mr. Shaw." The spell was broken. The room erupted, not in polite applause, in cheers. People were standing, raising their glasses to growing up. To Mr. Shaw, it was a definitive, public, and total humiliation. Thea's face, which had been pale, was now a splotchy, furious red. She looked at her new husband, at his parents, at the room, and she saw no allies. She slammed her glass down on the table, grabbed the skirt of her $20,000 gown, and ran. She literally ran out of her own reception. Greg, after a moment of panicked hesitation, trailed weakly after her. Thea's exit was like pulling the plug on a bathtub. The music, which had been swelling for the first dance, died with a tragic squeak. The band looked confused. The guests, who had just been cheering Edward, now stood around awkwardly, murmurs rippling through the crowd. The party was over. Thea's perfectly curated experience, the one she'd spent 2 years and a small fortune on, had been utterly detonated. And it hadn't been by the wrong ink or tacky champagne flutes. It had been by her own, unchanging, high school malice. Her downfall was immediate and absolute. I saw Greg's parents in a quiet, furious huddle with the wedding planner. Mrs. Harrison looked like she was giving orders. Mr. Harrison just looked tired. Guests, seeing that the bride and groom had fled, begged and to make their excuses and head for the valet. Thea's event of the season was over by 9:30 p.m. In the middle of the chaos, Edward and I were an island of calm. We were still standing at the head table. The half-eaten salmon sat cooling on the plates. "So," Edward said, a small, wry smile playing on his lips, "I know this great all-night diner on 4th Street. I think their dress code is slightly more flexible." I looked at him and I laughed, a real, honest-to-goodness laugh. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for my entire life and I could finally let it out. "But the cake," I whispered, gesturing to the massive, 7-tiered monstrosity in the corner. "I'm the maid of honor. I'm supposed to, I don't know, do something." "Lucy," Edward said, his voice gentle. He reached out and took my hand. His was warm and strong. "Your sister ran out of her own wedding. Your professional duties are, I believe, officially concluded." He stood up, pulling me with him. "Come on, let's get out of here." We walked out of the grand ballroom. We didn't run, we just walked. No one stopped us. We handed our valet ticket to a very confused-looking young man, and a minute later, the black Audi pulled up. We got in, and as the car pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the white-columned country club. I could see the chaos through the windows, the perfect day in ruins, and I felt nothing, no guilt, no sadness, just relief. An hour later, we were sitting in a red vinyl booth at the Starlight Diner. Edward had taken off his tuxedo jacket and undone his bow tie. I had kicked off my painful heels. The grayish dress felt ridiculous under the fluorescent lights, but for the first time, I didn't care. We were drinking thick strawberry milkshakes and sharing a basket of greasy French fries. "You didn't have to do that," I said quietly, dunking a fry in ketchup. You completely annihilated her." "She handed me the grenade, Luce," he said, his expression serious. "She'd been holding it over your head your whole life. I just took the pin out and gave it back to her. What she did with it, that was her choice." "She'll never forgive me," I said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. "No," he said, meeting my eyes. "She won't." He paused. "Good. Good. Good," he repeated, reaching across the table and covering my hand with his. "Maybe now you can stop trying to earn forgiveness from someone who doesn't know how to give it. You're free, Lucy. What are you going to do?" I looked at our hands, his strong, calloused fingers covering mine. I thought about the screaming, unhinged texts I would undoubtedly get from Thea in the morning. I thought about the awkward family holidays to come. I thought about the years I had spent shrinking myself, making myself smaller and quieter, just to avoid her weather. And I realized with a clarity that was as shocking as Edward's transformation that I didn't care. I wasn't that 15-year-old girl hiding in the library. I was a 27-year-old woman, a damn good nurse, sitting in a diner with my oldest, dearest friend. "What happened to you, Edward?" I asked, a real smile forming. "You're so different." "I just got taller," he joked. "And I built a few things, I saw the world, and I learned that people like Thea, they're just loud. They're not strong." He squeezed my hand. "Your turn, Luce. What are you going to build?" I looked at him, my brilliant, kind, and stunningly handsome friend, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I was finally, truly ready to find out.